So I was at Toronto International Film Festival. It was the 50th TIFF. It was TIFFty, okay? TIFF 50 is TIFFty. Everyone's saying it. I had a blast. I got to see a whole bunch of movies. It's always my favorite festival of the year. Love the vibes, love the audience, love the everything about it. Love it. I didn't get a chance to see literally everything I was interested in seeing. It was not possible. So if there's something you're expecting me to cover that's not in this video, chances are I'll just be seeing it at a later date. Still, I saw a lot of movies in a short amount of time, and I'm excited to talk about them, so here we go. Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie. It's a mouthful of a title, and that is intentional. It is a comedy. It is outrageous. I love this film. This is the latest feature from director Matt Johnson, and this is the film version of his show called Nirvana, the band, the show. It originally started out as a web series and then was greenlit as a 3-season television show on Vice. And this film existing is essentially the result of his previous film Blackberry being so successful. The Canadian government decided to give him money to make whatever movie he wanted, and this is the movie he decided to make, and I absolutely love that this happened, because it genuinely feels like a movie that shouldn't exist, but in a really good way. Now, I should mention that you do not need to watch the show or the web series to watch this film. There are plenty of people who went into this movie blind, and everybody absolutely loved it, but as someone who absolutely loves the television show, I strongly recommend you check it out either way, whether it's before or after the movie. There's a video on my channel from 2017 that explains everything I love about the show. It shows some clips and gives enough information for anybody even remotely interested in checking it out. So yeah, watch that video, watch the show. I haven't seen all the web series, so no comment, and this movie is fucking hilarious. Now, this was my second time watching the film, as I flew to Austin, Texas just to catch the premiere at South by Southwest. I'm not kidding, that's literally the only reason I went. My health issues at the time were also a lot worse than they are right now, so it was a lot. It was a lot for me to go, and I'm glad I did. No regretty, mom spaghetti. It was an absolute blast, so of course I would want to see it again at the Midnight Madness premiere in Toronto. Not only is this movie perfect for the Midnight Madness programming crowd at TIFF, but it's a very Toronto movie. Like this and the show, they're both set in Toronto, and it's not just incidentally in Toronto, no, it actually uses locations as set pieces. In many ways, it's a love letter to Toronto. Now, to give you a basic rundown, essentially this film is about two idiots who are in a band, and their band is called Nirvana the band. They don't even know that Nirvana is a real band, they just thought that Nirvana the band sounded cool, and they've been trying to get a show at the Rivoli, which is a venue slash restaurant slash pool hall in Toronto, and rather than practice their music and apply in normal ways, they devise schemes, kind of like Pinky and the Brain, or like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. There's always some new scheme to try and get the thing that they want, which is just to perform at the Rivoli. And both Matt Johnson and Jay McCarroll are really great at understanding what makes something funny. Like, this is an absolutely outrageous film. There are very memorable, creative, unique, original jokes. Things that when they happen, you go, wow, that's hilarious. I can't believe no one's done that until now. They both have a fantastic sense of humor, and at this point in their careers, they also both have a lot of experience with filmmaking. And that's not to suggest they were ever bad at it, but the amount that they've learned over the years is giving them so much more to work with and bring to the table. Without spoiling anything, this is a film that can only exist if you have a comprehensive understanding of how films are made. There's some really interesting, complex, fun stuff in this film. They have a lot of tricks up their sleeve at this point, and this is a film that can only exist with that level of comprehension. This is a film that can only exist if you have a thorough understanding of how things are going to be edited before you even start filming. And I wish I could go into more detail about that, but the film's not out yet for most people, so I don't want to spoil anything. We'll see what the trailer talks about. Maybe I'll do a spoiler section when I see this film a third time, because I'm planning on it. Anyway, huge shout out to the editors for this film, Kurt Laub and Robert Upchurch, because again, without spoiling anything, there was clearly a lot that they had to figure out and plan and coordinate. The nature of this film is one that inherently required a lot of problem solving for logistical issues related to the editing. I'll talk about it more at some point, but yeah, it was definitely a lot. Shout out to the editors, shout out to the whole crew, honestly. Much like many many of Matt Johnson's other projects, the filming style is a blend of fiction and reality. There's a narrative and a plan, but they also film in public candidly. So throughout the film, there are real people in real life interacting with them, not knowing that they're in a movie, and it's something that really adds to both the style and the humor. There's something really special about seeing how real people behave and react to ridiculous situations, and oftentimes the way that real people react to them will influence the direction that the plot goes. There might be a person that says something so distinct that they decide to later reincorporate that into the story. It's really cool stuff, very unique film, really funny. I highly recommend this film, so please check it out as soon as you can. If you're wondering about the release date, I've been told that it will have a limited release on February 13th, 2026, and a wide release on February 20th. And yes, that is for both US and Canada, potentially more countries, but that is not confirmed yet. And also, this release date is subject to potentially change. It could get delayed, but this is what it is right now. In the meantime, it's playing at a bunch of different film festivals, so check out your local film festival. There might be one coming up in a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and Nirvana the Band, the Show, the Movie might be in the programming. You never know. These things are everywhere. You just gotta look. Anyway, I absolutely loved this movie. When I saw the premiere at South by Southwest, I gave the film a low 9 out of 10, but since then, on my second watch, I have raised the rating to a solid 9 out of 10. And who knows, maybe it'll go up even higher on my third watch. We'll just have to see. Wait just a goddamn minute, I'm not done, okay? So between the time that I recorded this review and now me recording again a little bit in the future, I've actually seen the movie for a 4th time in theaters. And honestly, gotta say, I'm bumping it up to a 10 out of 10. It deserves it. I love this movie. Seen it 4 times, would gladly see it again. It's a blast. It is a wholly original, once-in-a-lifetime film to exist, and it is a genuine achievement. Awesome stuff, can't recommend it enough. See it in a crowd if possible. Easily one of the best movies of the year. Mark your calendars, bring your friends, bring your distant relatives, bring everybody, okay? Bring everybody to the movie. So we've got a new 10, everybody, a 10 out of 10. Ay. Next up is Bouchra. This is a 3D animated film about a queer Moroccan coyote filmmaker who moved to New York and her relationship with her mother, who still lives in Morocco. So yeah, I saw the synopsis for this one and I thought, okay, well, I'm pretty much obligated to watch this one. There was no trailer, no clips, no anything. This was the world premiere. And honestly, this was a very pleasant surprise. Now, this film is very obviously low budget and it is made with a very small team, but despite many imperfections, especially in the animation, this film plays towards its strengths and it does quite a lot with its own limitations. It's abundantly clear from watching the film that this is a very personal and authentic story. The main character is even played by one of the 2 directors of the film. Also, I just gotta point this out, this is one of the reasons why I watched the film. Yeah, queer furry movie, directed by Orion Barkey. When I decided to watch this movie, I thought, yeah, it's under 90 minutes, so even if it's cringe, you know, at least it's under 90 minutes and it's furry cringe, you know, that's fun. Now, the style of the animation was definitely jarring at first, but over the course of the film, I actually wound up kind of loving it. It has a very nostalgic, almost kind of grungy feeling, and the visual noise effect really adds to the moodiness of the imagery. I will say that there were some points where the lighting glitched out for like a frame. Oftentimes, these kinds of things are fixed between the festival premiere and the wider release, so who knows? But even despite the clear limitations on the animation, I was actually really impressed by the filmmaking overall. The cinematography is often clever and intentional, with plenty of smart and motivated choices for how information is shown. There was a point where the camera perspective was upside down, and it wasn't just, oh wow, so quirky, it's different. It was a choice that had a very clear intent and motivation from what was happening to the characters. The choices in the sound design are also equally interesting and motivated. The main character wears a leather jacket for much of the film, so we hear the sound of leather as she's moving, but during scenes where the character is experiencing a stressful situation, they made subtle changes to make the leathery sounds feel more present. They are louder and seemingly more frequent. It's a subtle choice that most people won't notice, but it really adds to the emotion of the scene, where the character feels as though she's taking up too much space, and the sound design is reflecting that. There are tons of really great choices like this that really elevate elevate the film's experience for me. The music in this film is also great. It has a very jazzy, almost noirish feel. Very chill, very moody. There's some saxophone. There's something that sounds like a Wurlitzer. The score throughout the film is super varied in terms of tone and instrumentation. Really great stuff. I should also mention that the sound design had so many great environmental sounds. Every scene has such a distinct and pleasantly stimulating soundscape. I really do love when films put this much effort into the sound design, and I wish that more films did this. Now, in terms of plot and structure, this film exists in kind of a hybrid documentary sense. Like, there are conversations in this film that you can tell are just, like, real conversations. Some of these might be voice actors recording over and recreating real conversations, but the same sense of flow and cadence are still there, and it makes for a very authentic feeling. There's something that just feels so fucking real about how they capture certain situations, moments, or scenes. Much of this film feels like genuine snapshots of someone's life. There are also parts of the experience that give me the impression it was influenced by Chantal Akerman. It was a very personal and meaningful exploration of self, and to be there for the premiere of what was clearly a very therapeutic catharsis for these filmmakers felt really special. Now, I will say that the pacing and structure might not be everyone's cup of tea. It is a lot of conversation, but I really clicked with the experience overall, and the conversations felt personal and interesting and memorable. Like, some of them are pretty quotable, and the situations and dynamics and the ideas that they're communicating just feel so real, you know? Anyway, check this film out as soon as you can. I have no idea when it's going to get a wider release. I was searching for some clips online, and it looks like they just created their YouTube channel. I was searching for one of their old shorts, and they uploaded it literally 8 minutes before I searched for it, so that's a pretty crazy coincidence, honestly. Their first upload on their channel was published 8 minutes before I searched for it. The channel is called Two Lizards, and that's the name of one of their old shorts. So yeah, check that out, subscribe, and if you make it known that you have interest in seeing and purchasing this film by leaving a comment or posting on your social media about it, that does very much help with the distribution of smaller films that very much do need help being seen. So always keep that in mind for smaller films. If there's something you want to see and you're not sure you're going to be able to see it, be loud about it. Making your voices heard does help, and I've always been a fan of being the change you want to see. So hopefully it gets some kind of a release this year. I know it's kind of niche. Out of all of the films in this video, I would say this one probably needs the most help. Also, I need to point this out. The head of animation is named Jason Coombs. Jason Coombs. Anyway, awesome movie, check it out, and I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. It's a low 8. It's a low 8 out of 10. Closer to a 7 than a 9, but still an 8. Next up is Magellan, starring Gael Garcia Bernal. This is the newest film from Filipino director Lav Diaz, who made a film that I really love called Norte: The End of History. He is a director that is prominent within the slow cinema genre, and when I say slow, I mean that this 2 hour and 40-minute long film is actually one of his shortest. I've got 2 of his films that I still need to watch for my 2016 list. One of them is 3 hours and 46 minutes long, and the other is 8 hours and 5 minutes long. So yeah, he's a pretty big commitment if you want to keep up with everything that he makes, and honestly, at this point, I'm not sure I should be, because as much as I love Norte: The End of History, and I really do love and recommend it, he's not all hits, and some of his films are just really, really boring. With this newest film, unfortunately for me, being one of those. And I guess I have a bias because I'm not really into historical period piece type films in the first place, but yeah, this was very slow, not interesting, didn't relate to any of the characters, didn't find any of it really compelling. There were some nice looking shots, but if you're gonna have a movie that I'm going to be stimulated by from the filmmaking presentation, then it needs to be a lot more polished. Like, if I'm gonna commit to something that's this long and slow of a movie, then I'm gonna need something that's more clean and beautiful and meticulous and detailed and well performed and well written and compelling and entertaining. Something like a Nuri Bilge Ceylan film. Shout out to About Dry Grasses, by the way, that movie was awesome. You can be as slow as you want, you just gotta give me something to chew on here. And the distant, subdued nature for how each scene is shot in this film just doesn't really feel like it's doing it any favors. It's just kind of slow and weird and borderline goofy, but not even in an entertaining entertaining way. There are also some weird lighting and exposure issues throughout the film. It was kind of confusing to figure out exactly what it was going for visually. Like, I'm not sure if it was trying to appear like a natural lighting type of movie, and even in that sense, the color grading just felt weird, and not like a Pablo Larraín kind of weird, more like an unfinished kind of weird. I was watching one of the promotional clips, and when Gael puts his head down, you can see the lighting in the room get brighter, like their camera was set to auto for the ISO or exposure or something, and because he moved his head down from the window, it was automatically adjusting to make the image brighter, and that was within the promotional clip that they're using to promote the movie, and I thought, okay, surely this is a mistake, right? Like it's just something wrong with the export or the upload, but sure enough, the exact same issue was in the exact same scene in the film, and I just thought, wow, what the fuck? And I swear the exact same thing happened at other points in this film in other scenes, but with this particular one, I was looking out for it, I was ready, and kind of sad about it, honestly. I was getting particularly frustrated in the last third of this film because as it was ending, I was like, okay, really, that's it? This is all you're doing with the movie? Okay. But I stuck with it because there were no other screenings in my schedule that I could be watching anyway, so, you know, just fucking 8:30 a.m. screening for Magellan. Oops. Maybe I should have just left the theater and started scrolling shit on my phone. I don't know. I guess I had a bit of sunken cost fallacy at this point. And once the movie ended, I think I gave it a 5, and there were some shots within the film, you know, near the end that looked really great, and I almost wanted to give it a 6, but I was like, no fucking way, you're not tricking me. I remember what the rest of the experience of the movie was like. You're not gonna trick me with a good ending. You're not gonna trick me with some nice shit near the end to make me think it was better than it was. And yeah, I think a 5 is pretty much right. It was kind of a nothing movie. It's like I didn't even watch a movie, you know? It wasn't great enough to be memorable, it wasn't terrible enough to be memorable, just right down the middle of the fucking road like nothing. So, I don't know, skip this one probably, and I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. Next up is A Poet. This is a Spanish film that premiered as part of the Un Certain Regard section at Cannes Film Festival, and it won the jury prize of that section, so I was kind of looking forward to it. It started out pretty interesting, it had some sad, funny tones, there was a strong sense of style with some great editing, but over the course of the film, it kind of just started falling apart for me. A lot of the film's messaging started feeling a bit obvious and heavy-handed, and the pathetic, sad, funny nature of the main character just started feeling a lot more sad than funny, and not in a good way. It kind of made for a weirdly frustrating experience. Everything that winds up happening to this guy, like, he kind of just deserves it. Like, everything was super preventable and obvious, and like every character in this film is just such a fucking idiot in ways that the film doesn't seem to be aware of. Like, it very strongly gives off the impression that there are scenes where you're supposed to feel bad for characters or care what's going on, or scenes that are supposed to feel meaningful that just ring hollow and forced and pretentious and maybe Oscar baity. This film also does the classic super annoying trope where the main character could just say a thing like, oh yeah, that's what happened, and you would explain it. You would have a reasonable explanation for them accusing you of doing a thing. Why don't you just say it? Why don't you just say it? Just say what happened. It's not as bad as the other thing that people are assuming that you're doing. You can just say what happened. That's the explanation. Why aren't you saying it? Very frustrating and stupid, and even if we are to say like, oh yeah, he's neurodivergent or something, you just can't. So much of the rest of the film feels equally stupid with other characters, so it doesn't make sense. The scenarios that they present are just things that would never happen in that way. The people would not react the way that they're reacting. Everything just feels so phony and inauthentic. It's just not very well written, and there's too many scenes where I watch them thinking, oh, I guess this is the we have this other movie at home version of that. Very frustrating story, and plenty of filmmaking pet peeves, like the way that they show a character being choked, where it's like, okay, you're showing me that they're not being choked. Why don't you just do it out of frame or make it look like they're being choked? Why are you showing me something where it doesn't look like what you're trying to make me believe is happening? There's performances in this film that feel very wooden, very held back, not convincing, not interesting. So, yep, I was pretty disappointed with this one. It feels like it thinks it's saying a lot more than it is. There's a lot of very direct, very explicit conversations on art within the film, but there's no substance to it. It's just very irritating and obvious. I liked the style well overall. There were parts of this film that were funny removed from the context of the entire film. Like, there were some funny moments, some funny scenes, but yeah, this whole experience would not recommend. It was very frustrating for me. Maybe it might not be for you, so maybe check it out if you want, but for me, I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. Next is Sentimental Value from Joachim Trier. Despite some misses, Joachim is a pretty fantastic director overall. His previous film, The Worst Person in the World, won Best Actress at Cannes Film Festival. Definitely check that one out, it's honestly fantastic. And this newest film won the Grand Prix at this year's Cannes. Both of his newest films are just so incredibly expertly presented. It's clear that he's learned a lot from his experiences as a filmmaker, and at this point there's just so much about his presentation that feels masterful. But as you're watching the film, he makes it look so natural and easy. He's really honed in his sense of vision over the years. Like, the opening sequence of this film is just so beautifully shot and superbly edited. Right away you know you're watching a great movie. It's proving itself immediately. It knows exactly what it wants to do, and it's confident about what it's doing. There's a clear sense of structure and intent and tone. It is super watchable and instantly feels well realized. It is also very well written, and you can tell that this is a film that actually cares about its characters. The way that they're written and performed feels super real and natural, and every character feels so full and rich and interesting. Throughout the film, I'm constantly excited to be learning more about these characters, and because of how genuinely they're written and presented, it always feels as though there is more to learn about these characters. This film shows such authentic portrayals of anxiety and panic attacks and depression, and the way that things are presented, it communicates something that does feel meaningful, like it actually has something to say. This film does such an authentic job at communicating what's shown on screen that I couldn't help but think about these characters in terms of what it's not explicitly showing. With every character in this film, it feels like there's so much more developing underneath the surface. Like almost kind of a boiling tension, but not explicitly that. It's subtle, but at the same time it feels very intentional and apparent. Even the set design evokes a similar feeling for me, where because the sets in this film don't feel like sets, if there's a home that's lived in, it genuinely looks and feels as though a home is being lived in. It communicates a sense of more happening beyond what it's showing. It's a subtle form of environmental storytelling where the way in which a set is designed gives you a history of information about the characters. And because this is done so subtly and naturally, this is basically just information for your subconscious, but it helps to create the illusion that what you're seeing is actually real. And this film very much explores concepts of past traumas and how they linger and affect us, so this strong attention to detail really does fit the film thematically as well. In terms of a straightforward narrative, the story is very simple and easy to follow, but the level of detail in this film's presentation ensures that despite its simplicity, it is not devoid of complexities at all. There is always something to think about and chew on and appreciate. Overall, really fantastic movie. Also gotta shout out, there's a scene where they reference a couple movies, and that scene was for me. You know, the movies they referenced, I'm like, oh, this is a me scene. That's great. I should also mention the score of this film was fantastic. Beautiful movie overall, very smart, loved the ending. So check this one out whenever you can. It looks like it's getting a limited release in the States November 7th, and I'm assuming it'll be nominated for some Oscars, at least one. So hopefully it'll get a wider release around then. And I'm giving this one a high 8 out of 10. It's closer to a 9 than a 7, and honestly, I pretty much expect this to go up to a 9 on my second watch. I still got to rewatch The Worst Person in the World, so, you know, maybe they're both 9s, you know? You never know. I'll have to watch them again. They're both great. I want to see them both again, so... yeah, watch them. Next up is Roofman. Roofman. This is the newest feature film from director Derek Cianfrance, who hasn't made anything in almost 10 years. And I really like this director overall. I remember thoroughly enjoying Blue Valentine and The Place Beyond the Pines. The Place Beyond the Pines is probably his most challenging and risk-taking out of his filmography. And although Roofman is definitely going for a safer and more commercially appealing approach, I still very much enjoyed this film overall. This is a film based on the true story of Jeffrey Manchester, a criminal who did some crimes times and decided to hide out in a Toys R Us, like a fully functional, operational one, employees, customers, and people just didn't know he was there, and it's kind of funny. There's a lot more to the story, and I'm not going to spoil it, but I will say that it is very funny and entertaining. It's a good story, and the main character is pretty fascinating. I can easily see why they decided to make a film about him. The film stars Channing Tatum and Kirsten Dunst, and honestly, the performances were all great. The film's score was also well done. It kind of reminded me a bit of John Bryan, but not quite. I was honestly pretty surprised that this turned out to be one of the better case scenarios for a film that is not trying to be stylized or challenging. It's a basic movie, but it's also better than basic. The worst I can say about it is that there are some scenes that feel a bit weird and cheesy. Like that singles brunch scene was just so awkward, it felt like an unintentional Tim and Eric sketch. But aside from some scenes and moments that aren't great, this is overall a super solid, well-presented film. The characters are fun to watch, they are likable and memorable, the narrative experience is enjoyable and often exhilarating, and even though there's quite a lot narratively that feels as though it's checking off certain boxes, the film overall still manages to feel genuine and inspired. This might not be an artsy film, but it is still very much art. It captures its emotions surprisingly well, and it was very satisfying to see the story come together. It had a surprising amount of heart, and honestly, I would definitely watch this film again. So if you're looking for something to put on for people that don't really want an artsy, challenging film, then yeah, this is a pretty good choice, I think. It's out in theaters right now as I'm recording this. It might still be when this is published. I'm not sure. Things have been very busy. I'm sorry this is late, but things have been difficult. Also, this is another movie that is rated R in the United States, but PG and G in some Canadian provinces. It doesn't really feel like an R-rated movie. There's some language at points, you know? Like, oh no, fuck. Oh no, that's, you can't see that. And then I think they show his butt once, but otherwise it, you know, it feels like it probably just could easily be PG-13, so I don't know. Whatever, the MPAA is stupid, and they always have been. Anyway, check this one out as soon as you can. I thought it was very good, super solid, and I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10. Another film I watched was The Christophers, starring Ian McKellen and Michaela Cole, and also James Corden. This is the newest film from director Steven Soderbergh, who has had a lot of hits and misses, but overall has made some really great films. I thoroughly enjoyed his previous two films, Presence and Black Bag, and both of those films were a collaboration with writer David Cope, whereas this film was written by Ed Solomon. And that would be one of the factors as to why I didn't enjoy this film as much, because despite the visuals looking really clean and professional and just being really well shot overall, the film just did not have a compelling narrative. And even though the characters were somewhat likable at points, there just wasn't anything interesting about their dynamics. The characters didn't really have much depth, and they all just felt like props in service of the narrative, which just was not that interesting. Michaela Cole plays an art forger who is hired by the children of a famous artist played by Ian McKellen, and they want her to secretly forge one of his unfinished works into a completed piece so that they can sell it once he dies and pretend that he made the piece himself. And this concept in of itself is not all that uninteresting. They just didn't really do much with it at all. There's a lot of really obvious, heavy-handed statements on art that pretend that they're saying something, but they're not really. There's a lot of yapping, and I guess with Ian McKellen playing a senile old man, we're just supposed to find that either comedic or endearing. Honestly, it feels like something that's trying to be Oscar baity, but it just doesn't really know what to do in order to achieve that successfully. It was very boring, it was meaningless, I was very sleepy, and when I wasn't sleepy, I was annoyed. The ending was particularly unsatisfying. By the end of this film, the tone implies that there's been some sort of journey that these characters have been on, that they've learned something and things have happened, but it just feels so unearned. The score for this film was good, but only removed from the context of the film, because the way that it's used implies emotions that the film itself does not earn. The overall experience of this film just feels so half-baked and derivative and forgettable. So yeah, not Soderbergh's best work. I don't see this being widely appealing at all, but who knows? I'm going to forget about this film's existence in about 5 seconds, so for now I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. Thank you. More like the Midstafers, am I right? Got him. Next, I saw The Voice of Hind Rajab. This is the newest film from director Kather Ben-Hania, who is honestly one of the most interesting directors working today. I very much enjoyed her films The Man Who Sold His Skin and Four Daughters. Very weird, super experimental, challenging, and meaningful. She's been doing some really great stuff, and I was really excited to check out this newest project of hers. This film won the Grand Jury Prize at Venice Film Festival, and it is a dramatization of a real event that took place in Gaza in January of 2024, where Red Crescent volunteers receive an emergency call from a 6-year-old girl who is trapped in a car while being under fire from Israeli military forces. Now, I know that this is a touchy subject for a lot of people, and it seems as though no matter what anyone says about Israel-Palestine, they're subject to a lot of harassment. I am not a person who is well equipped to be providing any meaningful discussion on this subject, but what this film explores is something that should not be controversial, and it's that no child deserves to be put in that situation. This film very much aims to show the extreme terror and stress and emotional brutality that took place here, so much so that the emergency phone call that is heard throughout this film is the real audio. And I understand how some might see that decision as being inappropriate or exploitative, but I think there's a level of intentionality when it comes to how this film is titled. To me, The Voice of Hind Rajab is intentionally evocative of The Diary of Anne Frank, which is another well-known and highly publicized experience of a child who did not deserve the situation they were put into. From my perspective, this film could only be seen as exploitative if you were to also say that The Diary of Anne Frank is exploitative. Sometimes it really does take showcasing a horrible situation like this to get human beings to confront their own perspectives. And even though I am not equipped to be providing any substantive commentary on the greater story that this tragedy is set within, we should all be able to agree that this is a tragedy that should not have happened. Now, in terms of filmmaking, this film is unsurprisingly really well made. It's a bottle movie type film where the entirety of what is shown is from the perspective of the Red Crescent volunteers. All of their performances are great throughout, and the film does a fantastic job at communicating the emotions of everyone involved. And with the title and concept of this film having a lot to do with sound, they made sure to put an extra level of focus and care on the audio, and the sound design was honestly pretty exceptional overall. I'm happy to say that the visual filmmaking was pretty interesting and creative. There was a clear understanding that they would need to give this film some visual flair if it was going to work in just one location. Throughout the film, there's a lot of impressive, quick, and precise focus pulling. There's also a great sense of emotion within the camera work itself, and you can really feel the sense of escalation with how the camera behaves in each scene. There's also some really cool creative choices that I won't spoil, where it intentionally confronts the audience with its blend of dramatization and reality. Some really cool choices here, and I love seeing a film that is challenging and creative. Every one of Kather Ben-Hania's films that I've seen so far has always included something that felt really unique and out there and meaningful. I love seeing weird choices that don't just feel weird for the sake of being weird, where the film actually gets you to think about the choices that it makes and why it would make them. My biggest issue with this film is that it is inevitably a pretty repetitive experience, and I understand that to a large extent it very much had to be to make the film they wanted to, because that same intentional sense of restriction in how this film is presented is what mirrors the experience of the people within this film that felt hopeless and unable to help. Anyway, I really love this director, and it was great hearing her talk about this film afterwards in the Q&A. It is abundantly clear that she made this film from a genuine place of empathy. It is not a cash grab. It is not cynical. She made this because she actually cares about sharing this story. So check this one out if you want. It is kind of sad. It is not a perfect movie, but like all of the other films I've seen from her, I was very impressed. Throughout the screening, I could hear people sniffling and crying the entire time, and there was unfortunately one person who was a little distracting. Basically, anytime anything happened, I would hear like right behind me. It was like there was a chipmunk behind me the entire film. And I wasn't about to say anything because I've already had far too many Larry David moments in my life, so I just kind of dealt with it. And the reason I mention that is because honestly it was so distracting that I feel like I should watch this movie again to get a more clear experience. So with that in mind, I'm giving this film a 7 out of 10. Next, I saw the new Gus Van Sant film, Dead Man's Wire. This is a film based on true events in the 1970s, where a man takes the president of a mortgage company hostage with a sawed-off shotgun. The film started out relatively strong with an interesting soundtrack from Danny Elfman. I really enjoyed the tone, and it was kind of reminiscent of the 1990s Oddworld game soundtracks. The situation presented in the film was immediately compelling. There were some interesting visual, stylistic, and editing choices as well. It felt solid and thrilling and a little ridiculous in a fun way. But over the course of the film, it just was not keeping my interest. Over the film's runtime, the soundtrack started to feel conflicting and cheesy. Some of the weird editing choices also started to feel more jarring. And unfortunately, I wasn't super sold on the performances. Throughout the film, Bill Skarsgård is doing this really raspy, kind of angry, barking voice. And for some reason, it just did not feel very authentic, and it came off as kind of forced. It was also very difficult not to compare this film to Roofman, which had quite a few similarities in terms of its characters and scenarios. They're very different movies with different goals and experiences, but I spent a good chunk of this film just wishing I was watching Roofman again. That was a way more solid and entertaining film, and yeah, I was kind of checked out for a good amount of this one. I honestly don't remember a lot about this movie. I remember it being fine, I remember it being solid, but yeah, just very forgettable. Not really all that special. I think I gave it a 6 when I watched it, but yeah, the fact that I don't remember much at all about this movie means I should probably lower it. So check this one out if you want. I apologize, I don't have much more to say about it. It was not that memorable. And I'm giving this one a high 5 out of 10. It's closer to a 6 than a 4, but yeah, high 5. High 5! Another film I saw was Love+War. This is the newest documentary from directors Elizabeth Chai Varsarelli and Jimmy Chin. These are the same directors as Meru, The Rescue, and Free Solo, which won Best Documentary Feature at the Oscars. Every film I've seen from them so far has been at the very least good, and this was no exception. This film focuses on photographer Lindsay Addario and the Ukraine war. It's a good showcase of her talents and commitment to war journalism, and also her personality. She's a fun and watchable character who is humorous and entertaining, but she also has a very real-feeling personality. Like, she's surrounded by all of these horrible atrocities, and she still manages to keep a relatively good attitude. There's something really endearing about that, and she was a good subject to cover. Now, I went into this film thinking it would be primarily about the Ukraine war, but instead it's an entire timeline of her experiences photographing inside various conflicts. And unfortunately, despite enjoying this film overall, it did feel kind of meandering. Like, it was still good, it was just really lacking as a full experience of a film. It was an interesting character study and worth a watch, but I kind of forgot about it, so it didn't really leave that much of a lasting impression on me. Don't really have much to say about this one. It was good, didn't really blow my socks off or anything, so check this one out if you want. It's gonna be on National Geographic, I guess already before this video is published, the way that things are going right now. And I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. Another film I saw was No Other Choice. This is the newest film from one of my absolute favorite directors, Park Chan-wook. He previously directed Oldboy, Thirst, The Handmaiden, Decision to Leave. This guy is one of the greats, and I'm always excited to see a new film from him. The way he approaches directing, it's clear that you're seeing a master at work. Even just in the opening logos to this film with the music coming in, I was so locked in. His films are always filled with such exceptional music selection, and it's really special to see that be such a consistent part of his work, especially when there are so many directors that just don't have a sense for that. The cinematography is also fantastic. There's just so much incredible visual depth and texture. The film has endlessly beautiful framing and staging. It has gorgeous lighting and environments. It is so abundantly clear that his films are thoroughly planned out and storyboarded, and every time I watch one of his films, I find myself being caught off guard with just how perfectly he does scene transitions. There's always so much clear intent and coordination. He presents his films with a full understanding of his own talents, and the end result is something that is beautiful and impressive and confident. It has great sound design and sound design choices. The performances are all fantastic. The premise of this film is that a man gets fired from his job at a paper mill, and once he understands the competition for the new job he's applying for, he decides that he needs to eliminate his competition. It's a film about what he feels he is forced to do in order to maintain his lifestyle for himself and his family, and I absolutely love just how comedically this story is told. Now, obviously, with this being a Park Chan-wook film, there is violence and there is intensity, but out of all of his films, this is the most comedic and silly. There is a great sense of energy throughout the film, and there are some scenes that already feel like such instant classics. It gets really funny, it gets really outrageous, it is an absolute blast and very entertaining. Now, some people have compared this to Parasite, and I should stress that this is a very different movie with very different goals. Just because it's a Korean movie that deals with financial inequality does not mean that it's Parasite. These are different directors, these are different stories. And sure, there are some similarities, but this is not trying to be that at all. There are actually quite a few little motifs and similarities to other Park Chan-wook films that I found pretty interesting. There are parts where it almost seems a little self-referential to his fans, although, you know, that might be a coincidence, who knows. I absolutely loved the set design in this film. There are plenty of trees and plants shown in different shots and environments, and every time we see them, they feel just so perfectly intentionally placed within the frame, which again shows just how thoroughly he plans and coordinates his shoots. It's very apparent that he has a strong sense of where things should be placed and how things should be framed, how characters move within the frame. It is all just so incredibly filmed. And there's just so much going on with how he shoots his films that you might not even notice just how impressive it is. The absolute precision with focus pulling, the endlessly brilliant visual symbolism even within the scene transitions, the ambition and creativity with how he decides to shoot each scene. There's a shot where characters are just passing around an iPad and the camera is locked to the iPad basically, and it's very confusing to understand exactly what he did to achieve this. Perhaps a camera was fixed to the iPad using a rig, but then you'd have to consider the weight of the iPad as it's being passed around to different characters. They're not holding an entire camera rig as they're passing it around, so perhaps the camera movement was programmed digitally on a dolly, and it was done with such precision that it genuinely feels as though the characters are passing it around and that it's not a programmed camera movement. There is a lot of really cool filmmaking within this film, and it is an absolute blast, especially for those who enjoy thinking about how films are made. And even if what you get out of films is more about the narrative and emotional experience, it is still an absolute blast to watch that I would highly recommend. It is compelling and thought-provoking, it is breathtaking, it is hilarious, lots of fun, lots of genuine laughs, so check this one out whenever you can, and I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. Another film I saw was Steve. I can't hear that name anymore without thinking of that song, like Steve Le Poisson Steve. The movie was fine, not really all that special. It has Cillian Murphy, and he's a guy that is looking after a bunch of troubled children in a facility, some troubled teens, and the story is a little too familiar for my tastes. Steve is also trying to manage his own mental health problems. He is struggling with some things, and that is making things difficult. The performances were good, and there were some cool and creative sequences, although sometimes they really missed the mark. There was a really long oneer that went from inside to outside, and it was using a drone and showing the kids playing football, and it went around for a while, it went back inside. It was pretty showy, and it did not match anything emotionally that was happening. The music choices were really bizarre. Like, there was really loud drum and bass playing that entire time, and it just did not match the emotions, and I get why they used it. It's because one of the characters listens to drum and bass a lot, but it just did not feel appropriate. Not a whole lot to say about this one. I will say that it was successfully emotional in most of the places that it tried to be, but because it doesn't really bring anything new to the table narratively, it doesn't really feel like a fully fleshed out emotional journey. It was well made overall, and it handled its subject pretty well, but it was ultimately forgettable. So check this one out if you want. I thought it was solid, but I don't really have any reason to see it again, and I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. I also saw The Smashing Machine. This is the newest film from director Benny Safdie, who is one of the Safdie brothers. I've enjoyed both of their films for quite a while, starting with Heaven Knows What. Good Time is probably my favorite film of theirs, but my favorite Safdie project overall would have to be the television show The Curse, which was a collaboration between Benny and Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone. Absolutely incredible show, love it, please check it out. Hoping for a physical release at some point, that would be awesome. Leave a comment below if you want to see a physical release of The Curse. Industry people pay attention to these sorts of things, so upvote that shit, post it on your own socials, let people know that you would buy it, and it might happen. The Smashing Machine is the story of Mark Kerr, who is a UFC champion, and apparently it's based on a documentary of the same name. Now, I haven't seen the documentary, I've heard it's pretty good, and overall I did really enjoy this film, even though it felt as though there was something missing. By the time it gets to the end of the film, it feels like it just kinda ends. Like, it probably needed to do a bit better of a job in terms of its narrative structure structure and flow, but still, I very much enjoyed it for what it was. It was an interesting character study, and it was cool to see the world of UFC, especially as it was starting out. The way it's presented in this film is different than how we now see it today. The performances were all great with the exception of Dwayne, who was good. Some people are acting as though he's gonna get an Oscar nom for this. I'm not so sure about that. He's never really been that great of an actor. I can tell that he's trying. Hearing him speak softly was kind of surreal for sure, but it was still Dwayne. But honestly, the other elements of filmmaking, like the directing and the makeup, were doing a lot of the heavy lifting here. He wasn't bad, he was good, but at the same time, he was still just Dwayne. I loved the style of this film. The presentation feels very authentic. There was some great energy and appropriate music choices. I really enjoyed the score for this film as well. It was appropriately jazzy and interesting. I loved seeing this film explore toxic relationships and addiction, and hearing Dwayne talk about the high of winning was kind of interesting in a meta way. I'm not sure I fully gelled with the sound design, as some of the impact sounds were a little weird to me, but I did get used to it by the end of the film at the very least. I do, however, appreciate the sound design in the opening of this film, where it's presented as an old broadcast and they actually put a lot of thought and authenticity into making the audio sound old. That's something that a lot of movies forget to do, and so it's good to see it, or hear it, I guess. Now, this movie definitely wasn't as interesting as it could have been. I do have a pretty high set of expectations for Safdie projects at this point, but at the end of the day, it kept my attention throughout, and it did feel shorter than its runtime to me. It was overall very well made with some cool creative choices, and I could see myself watching this one again. Who knows if it'll get better on a second watch, who knows if it'll get worse, but for now, I'm giving this one a low 7 out of 10. It's closer to a 6 than an 8. Next, I saw Train Dreams. Trains! This is a pretty beautiful and meditative film based on a novella.
Novella.
Novella?
Novella.
Okay, it's pronounced novella, according to Google. Oops. Why does this keep happening to me? It stars Joel Edgerton, who plays a railroad worker and logger, and it's basically a big montage of parts of his life. This is definitely a movie that aims to be more about the tone and vibe and feeling than necessarily the narrative, and in that sense, it is very, very well made. It is beautifully shot while showcasing a lot of breathtaking looking nature. The sound design was also pretty top-notch. There's plenty of luscious, fantastic Foley and environmental sounds in this film. The performances are fantastic, and William H. Macy absolutely transforms into his role. His character has a unique accent from the time period that I've never heard him use before, and from what I can tell, he absolutely nails it. There's not that much to say about the story of this film because, again, it is more about the vibes, and it is very engaging to watch these characters working. It explores their dynamics, and you get a sense of real camaraderie watching this film. This is a film that shows a lot of small but memorable characters throughout its runtime. This is a film that aims to be fairly dreamlike, hence the title, although it is still certainly a lot more straightforward than one of Terrence Malick's experimental films. The way that this film is presented and edited kind of reminded me of some of the montages in Wes Anderson movies, although a very different tone, obviously. Even though the filmmaking is beautiful, I do have to say there were some action moments that were a bit improperly communicated. It was a bit clunky and confusing. Didn't make up much of the film, but it did stand out. And the way things were edited in its final montage did seem a bit insistent on its emotions. The overall narrative journey did feel a bit too held back over the course of its film to justify how it ended, but still this was a very nice and immersive and overall pleasant movie to watch. So if this sounds interesting to you, then check it out, and I'm giving this one a low 7 out of 10. It's closer to a 6 than an 8. Next, I saw My Father's Shadow. This is a film set in Nigeria during the 1993 presidential election, where two young brothers spend time with their estranged father in Lagos. The overall experience of this film was nice and heartwarming and sentimental. It was cute and wholesome without feeling entirely sappy and meaningless. It had a great score with some interesting sound design choices at points, although I do have to say that unfortunately there was a scene near the end of the film where the score was not used properly at all. It was a bit much and it made the scene feel overly serious and cheesy. The film is relatively well shot overall, but its biggest problem is that things feel too cramped. It really needed some more wide shots because it was honestly hard to get a feel for the environment in many scenes. There were also some really great performance moments in this film, but there were also some points where it felt a bit shoddy. I'm not sure if it was just something that was lost in translation for me. There were some ups and there were some downs, but overall positive. I don't have too much to say about this film, but I will say that it was solid and worth watching, and despite becoming a little impatient with the film as it was kind of losing me towards the end, it was still overall an interesting watch and a relatively unique feeling. So if this sounds interesting to you, then check it out. And I'm giving this one a low 6 out of 10. It's closer to a 5 than a 7. Next, I saw The Love That Remains by Icelandic director Hlynur Pálmason. This is the same director as Godland from 2022, which I absolutely loved. And I'm honestly pretty excited to check out his previous films because I really connected with this one as well. This is a film about the complicated struggles of separation while still having children and also still having to see each other in the same small town. Much like Godland, this film was absolutely beautifully shot. Hlynur does a great job showcasing Icelandic environments. The environment itself always very much feels like a character in the film. The way things are shown and framed, the way things are edited. He has a very purposeful and intentional style and pacing, and it's one that really speaks to me on a personal level. Watching this film, I was thinking, yeah, you're speaking my language. I get it. I connect with it. It is a very poetic film and feels almost meditative at points. There's a strong sense of warmth and authenticity, and this film was a very different tone from Godland. It is very much a comedy, it is very funny, and it has great characters. It is both comedic and sweet while still being very visually interesting. There are choices made in this film that are creative to the point of it being surreal. It was very easy for me to get sucked into this film. I absolutely love how expressive it is. This is a filmmaker that actually puts thought towards expressing filmmaking as a cinematic language. And there are some really incredible shots and sequences in this film, both in concept and execution. I love the decisions for how long some of these shots go on, or how far away in the frame the action that is taking place is. There are very smart choices throughout, and it never feels forced or insignificant. The score for this film is fantastic, and the sound design is perfectly complementary. Everything put together manages to capture such a strong sense of tone and vibe and feeling. The performances are fantastic, and there's a lot of detail put into how actors are directed. There's a scene where a character is implied to be drunk, and it's not just the performance helping this out, it's the forethought to make sure his eyes are watery and that there's redness in his face. I love how this director communicates passage of time. There are some really interesting time-lapse shots in this film, very well thought out and expertly presented. There are scenes and sequences within this film that feel legitimately phenomenal, and with this film being a comedy, it was genuinely funny. I had a lot of genuine laughs, and there were many satisfying scenes and scenarios, and it's honestly super refreshing to be watching an actual comedy with this style of cinematic language, where sure, there's plenty that is silly and there's plenty to laugh at, but there's also so much that is just beautiful and breathtaking and meaningful. It is a fantastic combination of emotions and experiences. This director is way up there in terms of talent for me. He knows exactly what he's doing. It is confident and unique, and I absolutely love it. So please check this one out whenever you can. I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10 for now, but I'll, maybe bump it up to a 9 on my second watch. Honestly, it's something that I'm eager to see again, and I'll probably enjoy even more. And same goes for Godland. 8 for now. Next, I saw the new Rian Johnson film, Wake Up Dead Man, a Knives Out mystery. This is the third in the Knives Out trilogy, starring Daniel Craig. He solves mysteries. It's a whodunit type film. People generally seem to enjoy these films and that genre in particular. And for what it's going for, it does its job for sure. But I'm not really huge on the presentation. It's not poorly shot in the sense that things look unprofessional or anything. It's just that this film doesn't really utilize cinematography as part of a cinematic language to express something. Like, yeah, it looks like professionals shot the film. There were some interesting shots and visual concepts here and there, but they were really few and far between, and honestly, I don't even remember what they looked like. I only know of this because I wrote it in my notes. But in terms of the decisions for each shot and how things are communicated and decisions for editing and framing, it doesn't feel meaningful or purposeful. It doesn't really feel motivated by anything. Like, it looks clean, but it doesn't feel inspired. In terms of plot, this is, like the other ones. There's a mystery, there's some twists, it's a whodunit, You're getting what you pay for. It was interesting that it touched on the concept of people who use religion to spread fear and hatred. The performances were mostly solid. Daniel Craig was fun to watch as always, and Glenn Close was also really fun to watch, but not so fun that I would ever see this movie again. The entire experience of the film had things that were somewhat fun and somewhat interesting within it, but ultimately, for my tastes, it was kind of disposable. It did a good job being what it was trying to be, but this is just not really what I'm looking for. Not my thing. Check it out if you want. It was better than Glass Onion from what I can remember, but again, I barely remember anything about any of these movies at this point. So for now, I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. It was, it was fine. Well made, I guess. It was good at what it was trying to be, just not for me. Thank you. Next, I saw a Thai film called A Useful Ghost. This is one that I didn't really know anything about before going into it other than the concept, which honestly sold me on it. This is a weird black comedy film where a dead woman's spirit possesses a vacuum cleaner. And the way things are presented, everything's just kind of matter-of-fact, like people just accept it, like, oh, okay, I guess there's a ghost in the vacuum cleaner. The tone is pretty interesting and funny and absurd, although it does kind of remind me of other Thai films that I've seen. It's almost kind of like a dream logic type film, and there's a healthy sense of awkward, deadpan silliness that is really charming to watch. I love the practical effects in this film, and they're not anything too complex. They're just appliances that are moving around awkwardly. It's very shitposty, very silly, very weird. The film is also really well shot. I enjoyed the style, and it had great shot composition overall. It's nowhere near as nice looking as something like Uncle Boon Me, but thankfully this film has a better understanding of pacing compared to that director. And still, despite this, its biggest problem is that it is too long for what it is. It did unfortunately overstay its welcome, and it felt like it took forever to end, but thankfully the ending and entire end sequence were very, very satisfying. So even though the second half of this film did feel way too long, it was very much worth it to get where it was going. It was crazy, it was outrageous, it was lots of fun. So if this sounds interesting to you, then check it out, and I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10. Next, I saw Junk World. This is a Japanese stop-motion animated film that is a prequel to Junkhead from 2017. It has very charming animation, it is very weird and kind of perverse, and even though I didn't enjoy this film as much as Junkhead, it was still a fun watch, especially with the Midnight Madness crowd at TIFF. That was honestly the ideal way to experience this film. It really added to the experience to have a huge and energetic crowd filled with people that were there to see the movie, and also they might have been a little drunk. It is not a perfect film, and the pacing definitely could use some work, but it was both ridiculous and charming enough that the experience was well worth it. It's also important to note that this animation team is super fucking small. Like, there's only a few people animating the entire movie, so that in of itself is very impressive. It was also nice to see a bunch of behind-the-scenes footage during the end credits. Really inspiring stuff, even if the movie is far from a masterpiece. Also, the only child in the entire theater was sitting right behind me, and I guess the parent brought them there, not understanding that this would be a subtitled film and also probably not appropriate for kids anyway. So as soon as the subtitles came on, I could hear the kid saying, "What's it saying?" To which the mom replied, "You have to read it." And the kid said, "It's too fast." And in any other movie or film-going experience, this might upset me, but this was the right one. I was a few drinks in, the movie wasn't that serious anyway. It honestly added to my experience. It was hilarious. And this was happening literally the entire movie. The mom would do the best to summarize and simplify the dialogue for her kid. She'd say things like, "Now they're scared," or "Now they're trying to get out of there." To which the kid responded, "But what did they actually say?" It was hilarious. The kid was like 5 or something. The mom was trying her best. It was a bit of a disaster, and I'm glad that I was able to find it funny. It didn't really seem to be affecting anyone else in the theater. It seemed to be localized entirely within my ear range. But yeah, in terms of the film itself, it was charming. There was some animation that was great. There was some that felt cheap, but you could understand why it felt a little cheap. It had a good sense of humor, and many of the jokes landed successfully. And I guess what contributed to this film feeling too long is that the plot was just absolutely nonsensical. It was barely comprehensible. I was not super invested narratively at all. I was just there for the animation, the craftsmanship, the tone, the laughs, the weirdness. I got what I wanted out of the experience, and I had a fun time. So check this one out if you want, and and I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10. Next, I saw Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. This is a well-known director who's made a bunch of films that I've very much enjoyed: The Shape of Water, Nightmare Alley, and my favorite of his, Pan's Labyrinth. He's built up quite a fan base over the years, and he is an important voice in the industry. Although I don't enjoy every single one of his films, I'm always eager to check them out. Frankenstein is one that seems to be connecting with a lot of people, but for me, not so much. I personally found it to be way too long, and this was not helped by the fact that I did not care about any of the characters. I didn't find them interesting or relatable. I didn't really have anything to latch onto in this film, so my experience was one where I found myself being pretty impatient by the end of it. The film does have some great set design to appreciate, but there's also a lot that just kind of looks like a bunch of CG nonsense, where I can tell that they spent a lot of money, but it doesn't really feel like an environment that characters are actually in. There are parts of this movie that looked simultaneously expensive and cheap, like perhaps it needed a bigger budget or more time. Some of the CG fire and explosions looked distractingly bad. The practical gore effects were awesome, I loved those, but they were really few and far between, and I found myself just kind of waiting until another one would happen because I just was not attached to this story at all. And to this day, I still don't really understand why Victor wanted to kill his own monster. It didn't really seem properly developed. Like, it's okay if Victor's kind of an asshole, I just didn't understand why he was doing things. Like, oh no, he can only say his own name, I guess I have to kill him in such a weird way where I'm gonna explode like an entire building, what the fuck? I also don't understand why the two Hunter characters tried to kill him as soon as he escaped, because to them it's just a guy, it's just a tall guy. They don't know he's a monster or anything, they're just shooting a tall guy, like why are they trying to kill him? I know it seems like I'm focusing on insignificant details here, but they do stick out like a sore thumb to me when my experience is just so detached. I did not find the narrative to be compelling, I was very bored. Love Guillermo, but you win some, you lose some, not everything's gonna connect with everybody. If you don't find the narrative or characters interesting, there's not really much you can do. I was very, very bored, and I'm giving this one a 5 out of 10. I also saw The Exit 8. This is a Japanese horror film based on the indie video game of the same name. I have not played the game, but from what I can tell, it looks like a more liminal version of PT, where you're walking around in a loop and trying to figure out how to get out of the loop, and there's scary things that may or may not happen. Maybe I'll play it someday. My arms are bad right now, and I haven't been playing many games at all. You tried doing it with hooves. Anyway, this film is definitely flawed, but it also has a lot going for it. In terms of filmmaking, they do a great job at really selling the idea that this is an endless loop. The idea to include super long takes in this film was very smart because it gives off a sense of continuity throughout this endless looping location. They don't just resort to cheap cuts to continue reusing the same hallway. Perhaps they have multiple sets, or perhaps there is only one set and the shots are just stitched together really well. Whatever they're actually doing, there is a great sense of fluidity to it, and even though they don't do this for literally the entire film, it happens often enough that I was really impressed. Whatever they're doing is super smooth, very professional, and a great choice. On the flip side to this, there is a good amount of cheese to this film. At points there's intentional humor, but at other points there's an unintentional lack of seriousness. The story, although simple with an interesting structure, was unfortunately very tropey as well. A lot of tropes, the characters are very stupid. A lot of their problems would be solved by just remembering the very simple and clear rules that were established at the beginning of the film. Like, that kind of stupid. Like, it couldn't have been simpler. There was only one thing for you to know, and you forgot. And although this was kind of annoying, it wasn't the biggest issue I had with the film. What annoyed me the most about this movie was the absolutely gratuitous and excessive overuse of a particular sound. Basically, this is the sound that plays every time something spooky happens or every time the room resets. Like, I don't remember the exact context, but it was played a lot, and I don't know if the sound was from the video game. I don't think it was diegetic within the universe of the film. It was just a part of the soundtrack, I guess. Like, oh, spooky, scary. They played this sound like a bajillion times. It was infuriating. I could not stand that. However, despite being very irritated by this, it was still worth it to experience the rest of the film. Because overall, despite this and despite its cheesiness and despite feeling as though the movie could have been like 10 or 15 minutes shorter and would have been better from it, it is still a successfully creepy and engaging film for me. It's really cool to see this aesthetic of horror translated into film, and the filmmaking in this movie is more than competent. The long takes, the POV shots, there's some really well thought out and high effort filmmaking here. The film's execution was super cool, it was fun and engaging and impressive. So yeah, I did enjoy this film overall, even though there's much of it that I very much did not enjoy. So check this one out if it looks interesting to you, or if you don't have a sensitivity to the same noise being played a billion times. And I'm giving this one a high 6 out of 10. It's closer to a 7 than a 5. Next, I saw If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. This is the second feature film from writer-director Mary Bronstein. The film stars Rose Byrne and also includes Conan O'Brien and Aesop Rocky. And this isn't really a comedy. Like, sure, yeah, it's a dark comedy. There's comedic elements to the film, but the overall experience is much more of a dramatic kind of mind-fucky psychological torment type film. There be some weird things happening to the main character. Things might not be literal. What the heck is going on? Everything's confusing. Why are things weird? One of those types of movies. It's not quite Beau's Afraid, and it's not quite Synecdoche, New York, but there's a presentation style that reminds me of those things. It's got a really interesting tone. It feels kind of dream logic-y. This film is very much focused on its main character, played by Rose Byrne, and she does a really fantastic job with this movie. The film just would not have worked without someone capable enough to carry that role. This film has some really smart presentation choices for what to show, what not to show, and how to show it. I really enjoy when a film's presentation choices are not just weird and intentional, but actually meaningful. There's some really interesting meta layers to this film, and I love what it's communicating symbolically and metaphorically. The way that this film communicates its ideas is one that I very much vibe with, that there's more to it than meets the eye, and depending on how familiar you are with this type of communication will influence what you get out of the film. Honestly, I personally thought that what it was communicating was a little obvious, almost like beating you over the head with it at points. Like it was pretty clear to me. But then after the film, the people that I watched it with were all surprised with the things that I was saying that I thought were obvious, but they just hadn't realized, I guess. So it's, you know, different films are going to communicate differently to different people. This is one that I found very easy to understand in that sense, but who knows? I guess it just depends on the person. Maybe I'll do a spoiler section to talk about it, but first I'll just say a couple other things about the film. I think the one thing that was holding it back for me was that it just didn't get crazy enough for my tastes. Like, it is very much a film that's communicating messaging and hidden meanings beyond its surface level, but every film like that I really, really love is one that also functions on a surface level simultaneously. And it's not as though the surface level experience of the film was bad or anything. It was well shot with a cool style, it had a great sense of humor, it communicated anxiety really well, but it was also just too long and repetitive for what it was. The film's an hour and 53 minutes long, and for my own tastes, I feel as though the film either had to be shorter or had to go crazier. There are definitely fun, weird, outrageous moments and payoffs. There's some fun practical effects that they combine with CG. It looks really great, but most of the film is just kind of this depressive anxiety experience that does build its emotions over time, but still just doesn't get crazy enough for me. It needed to go crazier to justify that runtime. Otherwise, great stuff overall. Alright, here's the spoiler section. If you don't want to hear spoilers for this film, then just go to the next chapter where I start talking about another movie. Here's your warning, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so to me it was pretty fucking obvious that the entire film was just a metaphor for a woman's grief over getting an abortion. Like, the fact that the daughter was talking almost as if it were a voice in her head, and they actively avoided showing her face for much of the film. They made constant references to child killers throughout the film. She was watching something on the television. It was either a film or a documentary special about female child killers. The daughter character is suffering from an eating disorder and must be fed through a tube each night, kind of like an umbilical cord, you know? One of her clients was a mother who just abandoned her baby in the middle of her session. Also, the daughter character has to hit a certain weight threshold for the tube to be removed, right? Like, so that's as if, like, oh, if you're healthy enough to be born, then you don't have to have the umbilical cord sort of thing. Also, the title of the film, If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. Like, what does a baby do in your tummy? It kicks, right? But like maybe it doesn't have legs yet. I'm sure there's more to pick up on, but yeah, it all seems to pretty clearly fit the idea that there's a woman who is debating getting an abortion, or maybe has some sort of grief over getting an abortion previously, that there's some mental torment going on inside her own head. Not everything is literal. You have to think about what represents what. Who knows? I'll watch it a second time. And if you watched the film and have anything more to add to that, actually, leave a comment, because I'm actually interested in reading these types of discussions. Just make sure to clearly mark your comment with spoiler in all caps and the title of the film, like spoilers for this, and then just like hit the enter button a couple times just so people would have to click read more to read the rest of your comment. You know what to do. So yeah, I'll watch this film for a second time at some point. I'm not exactly rushing to see it again. It was really good. It was really good. There's a lot that I really liked about it. Just didn't go crazy enough, and maybe needed to be shorter. Not sure. Perhaps I'll enjoy it more on a second watch. Perhaps I'll enjoy it less. Who knows? But for now, I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10. Next, I saw Sirât. This is from director Oliver Lachey, who is a Spanish filmmaker originally from France. Not sure if I pronounced his name correctly, but yep. This film was official selection at the Cannes Film Festival, where it won the Jury Prize and the Soundtrack Award and the Palme d'Or, and also the AFCAE Award Special Mention. Not sure what that is. Who cares? And it has also been selected as the official Spanish submission for the Best International Feature Film category at the Academy Awards. We'll see if it gets nominated. I have no idea. But this film was very, very well made and very memorable. It is an absolutely unforgettable experience that is sure to provoke conversation from anyone who watches it, but it's also a movie that you can't really be prepared for even if you watch the trailer. There's some shots in the trailer that I feel are a bit spoilery, so we won't be using those in this video. This is an experience that I found to be really awesome, but I don't know if every person who watches it is going to be able to handle it. It's honestly kind of intense, and I would recommend watching this in a theater with the best quality sound and picture available. It is a very immersive experience, and it's honestly great to watch it with the volume turned up. Crank that shit. It's got a great soundtrack. There's a lot of really intense electronic music in this film, and on my first watch I assumed that much of it was just selected from the director as a playlist type film where he picked pre-existing songs that appropriately fit the tone. But after watching the film a second time, I realized that these electronic compositions were actually a part of the original score for the film, which is honestly really fantastic. Kong Ding Ray, if I pronounced that correctly, did a fantastic job. The soundtrack is available right now on streaming platforms, and it's honestly a great representation of what the tone of the film is like. It is a very music-heavy film, and the characters within the film are music fans, so it all fits together really nicely. Essentially, the basic premise of the film is that a father is looking for his missing daughter in North Africa, and his son is also there with him, helping to find her. They search for her at different music festivals because they heard that she might be at one of them. They meet other interesting, weird characters to help them along their journey. But yeah, the basic synopsis does not really cover what the film is actually going for. There's a lot to read into about what it's saying, and there's a lot that happens that I'm not going to spoil, so you're just going to have to see the movie. It is very, very well shot, and the look of the film combined with the editing and music makes for a very mesmerizing experience. You could even call it a fairly spiritual film. There is a genuine sense of journey that these characters go on, and these characters are very, very well performed, very natural, very well written. They are likable, and they feel like real people. It makes for a very personal and intimate and engaging experience, and again, that's not even the half of it. It looks like Neon is aiming for a wide release in January 2026, so check this one out as soon as you can, see it as soon as possible, go in blind. Again, not everyone is going to be able to handle this film. It is quite distressing and intense, but I absolutely loved this movie. I've seen it twice now, and I'm giving this one a high 8 out of 10. It's closer to a 9 than a 7, and who knows, maybe it'll be bumped up to a 9 at some point. It was awesome. And last but not least, I saw the new Jafar Panahi film, It Was Just an Accident. Jafar Panahi is a very acclaimed and important Iranian filmmaker. He had also previously worked as an assistant director for legendary Iranian filmmaker Abbas Kiarostami. If you haven't seen Taste of Cherry yet, please watch that film. I consider it to be incredible. Many of Jafar's films have been banned in Iran, and at one point he was sentenced to 6 years in prison, and even banned banned from filmmaking for 20 years. I first became aware of him around this time as he started to make weird meta documentaries challenging this. His film titled This Is Not a Film was smuggled out of Iran on a flash drive to premiere at the 2011 Cannes Film Festival. Obviously, artists should not be censored for making their art. This should not be controversial. The idea of a filmmaker becoming a political prisoner for the art that they create is not a good thing. So I'm very happy that he's continued to create films, and honestly, this newest one is my favorite out of the ones that I've seen. I've only seen a few of his other films, and I still need to go through a bunch of his older stuff, but this one was very enjoyable, and I can really see why it took home the Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival. It is very well shot, with some scenes feeling honestly masterful. It has superb cinematography with lots of long, beautiful shots and some really impressive oneers. It has great sound design with some really memorable and impactful sound design choices. Still, I did notice at least one stock sound effect that other people might not pick up, and it didn't ruin the film, but you know, it stuck out to me just as a weird guy. This film has a great concept. Essentially, it's a hilariously comedic and awkward revenge story where the main characters are trying to figure out if the person that they're seeking revenge on is even the right guy. These situational concepts are very funny and help to create a strong sense of visual memory. Because of how things play out, there's a character that's in a wedding dress the entire movie. It not only makes for a very funny situation, but also a memorable aesthetic. This film is very well paced with lots of strong dialogue and performances. The way that this film is written and presented feels very theatrical and in a good way. There are very lengthy and dramatic conflicts and conversations within this film, where the incredible writing and performances really allow the emotions to build up over the course of the scene. There are entire scenes in this film that feel as though they belong in the same place as any other narrative classic, so much so that it feels like an absolute shoo-in to receive an International Feature nomination at the upcoming Oscars. There is a lot of competition this year, but it seems very likely that this will be a strong contender, because it does very much feel like an Oscar movie, but without being made in any kind of cynical Oscar bait way that would compromise on its own vision. I really love watching Iranian films that are able to showcase the perspective of everyday citizens, people who are victims of the tyrannical holy war nonsense establishment. It is very important to remember that a country's government does not always represent its citizens, and that there are plenty of people caught within the system that do not support it. It is a valid and important perspective to share, especially considering that doing so has often caused artists to unfortunately face legal repercussions. This is a very powerful narrative experience that touches on ideas of justice and retribution and shared traumas, and I love that it's able to confidently showcase its powerful emotions while still being a very fun and silly and sometimes absurd entertaining watch. This was both an incredible story and an incredible performance piece, and the ending to this film was honestly perfect. So check this one out whenever you can, and for now, I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. Alright, that does it for the official programming at TIFF, but I wanted to take some time and shout out a couple other things here. One being the new Matt Farley and Charles Roxburgh film Evil Puddle. This was one of the films featured at the Midnight Dankness movie night. It is not a part of TIFF, but it is programmed and hosted by Peter Kaplowski, who is responsible for the Midnight Madness selection at TIFF. And this is my second time attending Midnight Dankness. I really love the emphasis on outsider filmmaking. Matt Farley is a filmmaker who creates very, very funny movies. They are very low budget, they are very shitposty, they are very unserious, and they know exactly what they are. His films make for a perfect watch with friends and have a drink type experience, where you're kind of laughing at the movie as much as you're laughing with it, but the film is also laughing at itself. It very much understands that it is dumb and silly and doesn't make any sense, but there's such a great level of passion and authenticity that goes into these projects. You can really tell that these people enjoy what they're doing, they're having an absolute blast. This is not a film where you're going to find incredible performance acting or cinematography, but this is a film that gives off an infectious sense of the love for creating art. They make these movies for basically no money and a bunch of their friends and family members performing, and the writing is very funny. It works very well for what it is. So do yourself a favor and check out Evil Puddle, and also check out the rest of Matt Farley's films. I talked about him a bunch more at the end of my previous year's TIFF video. He's a very interesting character, and there's a lot more to know about him, so check that out. You can currently buy the film right now on Vimeo. I would highly recommend it. It was a blast. I cannot think of another filmmaker that really nails the so bad that it's good genre genre while also being so self-aware about it. It's far too often where we see filmmakers trying to do this same thing but not really nailing it, but these guys really get it, and I'll be checking out a lot more of their films in the future. So check this one out, and I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10. And finally, the last shout out goes to Castration Movie, directed by Louise Ward. This is an ongoing anthology series where the first 2 parts have been released on Gumroad, and you can buy all of them, including the upcoming ones that haven't been released yet, for like $3.65 US. The first 2 films are over 4 hours long each, so this is an incredible value. I have yet to see the second film, but I've seen the first one twice and it is absolutely fantastic. This is a super experimental film with a DIY approach, where much of it is filmed in locations where they don't have permission to be there. It is shot on a digital Hi8 Handycam. The look and tone and feel of this film is just so well realized. I absolutely fuck with the vibe of this movie, and honestly, it is very well paced, especially for its runtime. There's a really fantastic sense of characterization to both the style and the characters within this film. It is a very dialogue-driven narrative experience, but the way that information is presented in this film provides a great sense of narrative flow. The characters and conflicts and dynamics are all very well established, and it helps to create an extra layer to the conversations that we see in the film. It's not just a film where you're watching characters talk, it's one where you're absorbing what's happening beneath the surface of their conversations. And these characters and conversations are so engaging that I'm often reminded of Richard Linklater films. The opening monologue feels as though it could have existed in a film like Waking Life. There was a strong sense of attachment to these characters that grew on me over the course of the film, and by the end of the first feature, it honestly felt as though I was watching a compelling television series. Like, damn, I'm enjoying these characters, I've spent a lot of time with them, and I'm really interested to see where things go for them. Much of this film showcases trans culture in a very authentic and meaningful way, and weirdly enough, it is also very much about 4chan culture. Again, very authentic, it is clearly made by someone who actually has a grasp on what that is. Much of this film is very rough around the edges, but it is super self-aware and it does not hide its imperfections. Instead, it celebrates its imperfections and effectively uses it as a part of its style and aesthetic. And after watching the first feature twice, I even gained a newfound sense of symbolic purpose for these choices. This film is absolutely incredible, it is super unique. At points, it feels like a healthy mix between Richard Linklater and early Harmony Korine and even John Waters. There's a good amount in this film that is intentionally provocative and aims to gross you out or shock you. I consider that to be very fun, but I understand it's not going to be for everyone. I should also mention there's a really great sense of authenticity when it comes to the dialogue and performances. So much of this movie just feels real, as if we're seeing the film through some omniscient presence that just happens to be filming with a digital Hi8 camera. When characters are talking in bed, they actually look like they were sleeping. Their hair is messed up and greasy, their voices are groggy, and there's even more to this subject that I won't spoil, but this film genuinely manages to capture a level of authenticity that very few films do. So check this one out. Again, it's cheap as fuck. You're basically getting an entire TV series worth of shit for just a few dollars. It's probably the best value that you could get in terms of purchasing a film right now, so buy this movie and support talented and independent artists. This film is able to be the way that it is because there's no one telling her what to do. It exists in a super unique space, and it is one of the most unique films you could be watching right now. It is bold, it is confident, and I absolutely loved it. And I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. Anyway, thank you all for watching. If you liked this video, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe, you know what to do. Sorry this video took so long to make. I've been dealing with a lot of bullshit, a lot of health issues that I've explained in detail on this channel already, but things are getting better. So stay tuned for more stuff and try your best to be patient. Things are still slow, but things are still happening and things are getting better. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.